It is Sunday, November 26th, and this is The National. Embarrassed and ashamed, Senator Al Franken faces reporters for the first time since he was accused of groping several women.
Some drivers are going public after their airbags deployed without warning and for no apparent reason at all.
But we begin in Regina with allegations of racial profiling at a Canadian chain store. It is a story both of one young man's frustration with how he was treated at that store near his home and just how quickly it grabbed the attention of so many people right across this country. And it began with a video that Ezekiel Big Knife shot himself at a giant tiger. He was fed up because he said every time he went to that store, one of the employees would follow him around.
It made me feel less than, made me feel very uncomfortable and like I was less than them.
This past Thursday, Big Knife decided to record what he believes was a blatant case of racial profiling. He says he'd never been accused of stealing from that store.
You want to record me too? Let's record each other.
He made it clear to the worker that he was capturing all of this on video. Still, the man kept a close watch, following along for nearly 5 minutes as Big Knife walked around. He posted this video to Facebook on Friday. It got thousands of views. The company has suspended the employee. As the CBC's Joe Kubra tells us, the video has captured what is, for many Indigenous people, an enduring frustration.
It feels good to know there's a lot of people supporting me, and I didn't expect it to go that viral that fast. I just wanted to show Facebook, like my friends and family, what I was going through.
18-year-old Ezekiel Big Knife says he was followed by the same employee at least 7 times over the past month before he recorded the video to expose what he calls harassment and racial profiling.
I'm sick of it, I shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable shopping in a public establishment. Why me of all people? Like, what, because I'm looking rough? Like, I just get off work, of course. Being a drywall, you're going to look dirty going into a store.
He says his initial complaints to the store went ignored, but the video has sparked action. Giant Tiger tells CBC that in addition to suspending the employee, it's now investigating the matter. A company spokesperson says what occurred in the video in question is a direct contradiction of our brand values, as well as our policies, and quite frankly, never should have occurred.
I'm glad they're taking it seriously, but they need to go further and really go on an educational campaign to talk to their employees.
Manitoba Keewatin Okamakinak Grand Chief Sheila North Wilson has been vocal about her own experience being targeted and followed in stores in Winnipeg. She commends Big Knife for speaking out.
This is just one example that was caught on camera, and I bet you if more Indigenous people did that, we would see the enormity of the actual problem.
Back in Regina, Big Knife says the company has reached out to apologize.
I'm just disappointed that the managers there handled it the way they did. They could have did it more in a professional manner. They could have said an apology towards me instead of having the corporate office in Ottawa phoning to apologize on their behalf.
But Giant Tiger hasn't lost this customer. Big Knife says the actions of one employee will not stop him from coming back. Jill Kubra, CBC News, Winnipeg.
This, of course, is not the first allegation of racial profiling at a Canadian chain store.
You're leaving the store.
In July, this Indigenous man, Kameo Capo, was confronted, accused of stealing at a Canadian Tire store in Regina, and physically thrown out of the store. All of it caught on camera. Many in the Indigenous community who watched the incident were furious, saying it was just another example of racism and racial profiling that they experienced while shopping.
You have a large handbag or a cart with kids in it, you're followed around to make you feel like you're already a thief when you're only shopping?
In 2012, the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission discovered members of visible minorities were unfairly targeted by retail workers more often, more likely to be ignored, followed, or forced to leave a store or business. The Retail Council of Canada has developed training for retailers.
Watch everybody. Don't discriminate. Don't use past statistics. Don't use your own personal bias. If you have a personal bias, to watch a specific individual.
And if you're at a store and you feel you've been targeted, this lawyer has some advice.
The store can ask anybody to leave at any time, really. If you feel like it's a continuing thing, you should go to at least the management to start and make a complaint that process.
Meanwhile, many retailers are struggling to reduce the number of thefts from their stores, a challenging job often left to private security officers. Last year, Statistics Canada says there were almost 500,000 cases of theft under $5,000. That's the criminal code offense that is often associated with retail theft and shoplifting charges. So, Rosemary, it'll be interesting to see, particularly from that chain, beyond the statement, if we hear anything more from them on their general policies.
Yeah, and I'm surprised the guy's going to go back and shop there, so he obviously doesn't hold a grudge. Meanwhile, Ian, he says he's embarrassed, ashamed, and that his behavior was inexcusable. But today, U.S. Senator Al Franken also said he isn't going anywhere. The former Saturday Night Live funny man was first accused of sexual harassment more than a week ago, and he refused to face the media. Until now, that is. Paul Hunter has more on what he did and what he has to say about it.
At the time this photo was taken, Al Franken, then a comedian, had just finished a stint entertaining U.S. troops in the Middle East. This was during the flight home afterward.
I am ashamed of that photo. She is, she didn't have any ability to consent. She had every right to feel violated by that photo.
The woman he appeared to grope, Leanne Tweeden, now a San Diego broadcaster, had been performing alongside Franken. She says he also forcibly kissed her backstage at one of those shows in 2006. Today, Franken spoke publicly on it for the first time to some news outlets in his home state of Minnesota, speaking as well about allegations from 3 other women, including Lindsay Menz, who've said Franken put his hand on their behinds without consent while being photographed with him as he campaigned for office.
I'm taking responsibility. I apologize to the women who have felt disrespected and to everyone I've let down. That's a lot of people.
Franken said he doesn't recall any of those other alleged incidents because he poses for thousands of photos. Still,
I've learned from these stories that in some of these encounters I've crossed a line for some women, and I know that any number is too many.
Adding that while it was never his intent to cross a line, intent, he said, doesn't matter. And Franken emphasized he has no plans to step aside as senator, though noting in a TV interview,
I have a long way back. I have a long way back to win back the trust of the people of Minnesota.
To that end, Franken says he'll fully engage in the ethics inquiry already called into the allegations. His first day on Capitol Hill since all of this erupted is tomorrow. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Allegations have had repercussions today for another U.S. politician. Congressman John Conyers, 88 years old, has been accused of sexually harassing female staffers and is now under investigation by the Congressional Ethics Committee. Today, he is stepping aside as the ranking Democrat on the U.S. House Judiciary Committee. He denies the allegations. No crash, no rollover, nothing hit. So why are airbags in some cars going off for no reason at all? It can mean expensive repairs, an injury, and as Rosa Marcatelli reports, some drivers are now getting stuck with the bill.
What bugs me about this is that Honda seems to have the attitude when I talk to the senior people that airbags go off. So what?
The van is just sitting. It's parked on the couple's Saskatchewan farm. There's barely a scratch on it, yet the airbags along both sides are hanging down. It's been that way since they deployed without warning a month ago.
Rick was sitting in the passenger seat. His shoulder was very sore, my head was sore, my ear was ringing terrible.
The first time it happened, Rick was driving. Traveling with him, a group of adults with developmental disabilities the Ukes care for.
They just went off and scared the heck out of me.
Their insurance company wouldn't pay for repairs, saying there was no collision. It found the airbags deployed because of a malfunction with the vehicle's airbag system, and also noted airbag sensors can be too sensitive, a risk, it says, accepted by the automobile industry. We asked Peter Keith, an accident reconstruction expert, to look at the insurer's report.
They're only meant to deploy if you're having a forward collision, a sideways collision, or a rollover.
In your mind, it's a defect?
Completely.
Honda's responsible?
They designed it, and it's their defect.
Honda paid for the repairs the first time. It refused the second time, blaming the driver and the gravel road. The company tells Go Public there is no problem with its system and that the airbags deployed as designed, saying it's normal for airbags to be sensitive while driving on dirt or loose gravel roads. Drivers of other models, GMs, Nissan, Fiat Chrysler, and more, have filed similar complaints with Transport Canada. Cynthia Germain took Volkswagen to court and won after her airbags randomly deployed.
They knew it was a problem. You're saying they didn't want to pay for it.
They did not want to pay for it, no. Nope. And they knew it was a problem. And that was part of the negligence as well, too.
In her case, the judge ruled it is the responsibility of the vehicle manufacturer to equip its vehicles with airbag systems that only deploy under accident conditions. In my view, the judge said, the premature deployment of airbags is a manufacturer's defect.
It's just wrong. It's just wrong that we had a vehicle that was worth money. It was worth $8,000, and now it's worth $0.
The Ukes tried to negotiate a trade with Honda, but couldn't come to an agreement. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
If you have a story for Rosa or anyone on her team, you can always send them an email, gopublic@cbc.ca. And it's possible we hit peak Canada here in this town tonight, Ian.
It is true. I've been to a variety of CFL towns when they've hosted the Grey Cup. It is a phenomenon. But tonight in Ottawa, well, it doesn't get much more Canadian than this. Snow on the field, the Toronto Argonauts and the Calgary Stampeders clashing right now in the 105th Grey Cup. David Common joins us now live just outside the stadium. It has been snowing quite hard at times this evening. Tell us about the scene, first of all, David.
Yeah, well, Ian, we were expecting flurries tonight. What we weren't expecting was a slip and slide on the field. I was talking to one reporter who has covered Grey Cups for decades. He says he doesn't think it's been since 1996 that there's been this level of slipperiness. Some of the players were changing out their cleats within the first couple of minutes of the game just so they would be ready, because it is slidey out there, and we've seen the effects of that tonight.
Slidey, I like that word. Now, in the United States, the Super Bowl, sometimes they have blowouts. Grey Cup is often a very competitive game, and so it is tonight.
Indeed. The Calgary Stampeders, though, came in this certainly as the one to beat, and at this point, they are well ahead. The Argos have been giving them a run for their money at times, but the Stampeders have maintained the lead throughout this match. We'll see. The Argos have been very good, but as fans came in this afternoon, you know, they were really excited when those gates opened. Considering the Argos have trouble getting 10,000 fans for their regular games, the faithful turned out tonight. Do you have the faith?
Argos! Yes.
But Calgary entered as one of the winningest teams the league has seen in years.
Out from Calgary, so we're here to obviously watch Calgary win.
And you're confident that's going to happen?
Absolutely. Go Stamps.
It was -7 when the gates opened, so this guy surprised us. A little more. Check out Doug Falconer back then. The CFL today is doing okay. TV ratings have been good, attendance at playoffs breaking many records. There's even been serious talk of expansion to Halifax, and that would be the only team in Atlantic Canada. Long a dream, now a possibility. You guys look well prepared for the weather.
We certainly are.
These guys, though, they want to talk north. So what's the story here?
Well, we think the next CFL franchise should be in Yellowknife.
That's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
And where are you guys from?
Yellowknife.
Are you?
Absolutely.
All right. What would the team be called?
Northwest Territory Polar Bears.
Right here. Northwest Territory Polar Bears. All right.
Absolutely.
Now, here is the brilliance in their plan, Ian. If they are in, as they plan, the Northern Division, they'd have nobody to play against. In other words, they get to the Grey Cup every single year, and they'd be undefeated in the regular season because they'd have nobody to play against.
Whimsical, but I have to say I don't see a team going up there. I do see you being live next hour, and you'll be able to tell us the story of the game. Still pretty close, just an 8-point margin, a lead for Calgary. David, thank you very much. Coming up on The National, can Zimbabwe's new president heal the wounds of a decades-old massacre that he's associated with? Margaret Evans talks to the people about their hopes for the future.
And they're being used on the streets in the U.S. to detect fentanyl in drugs. So why are the Canadian-made test strips being handed out freely here in this country?
And Team Canada's hockey coach, Mike Babcock, talks frankly about an issue not often discussed in the sports world: mental health.
Our game's about suck it up. It's about digging it in. It's about being mentally tough. And saying all that, mental toughness and mental illness have nothing to do with each other.
Margins on car sales have become so slim that many dealerships now make more money on service and repairs than on new and used car sales combined.
You booked in for a peace of mind inspection, check your brakes.
What you may not know is that service advisors don't have to be mechanics, and the more they sell you, the more they can often make. Lucas Lung learned it firsthand in his years as a service advisor.
I would say 90% of these dealerships do work by commission. When you're a service advisor, you are a salesperson. This is how you make your living, right? So you have to upsell them. They come in for an oil change, you're upselling somebody.
Holy cow, $1,200.
Marketplace heard many complaints from across the country, so we ran a series of tests. An expert
Hi, nice to meet you.
Pre-inspected this woman's car, then we asked a dealership for their diagnosis. It came by phone: get the brakes done.
So what he was suggesting is to replace the rear brake drums and the brake shoes. With parts and labor, it'd be about $621 plus tax.
Wow, is that something that I can think about?
But our expert rejected that.
When I had the drums off, everything looked perfectly normal for that age of brake.
Not only did the dealership recommend service that wasn't needed, they also failed to mention something that was. The largest recall in automotive history, the car's potentially defective airbag.
What does the law say about a repair shop telling you need to do something before you need to do it, or you don't even need to do it at all?
Repair shops cannot offer services that aren't needed.
Harry Malley is with Ontario's government watchdog.
They can't mislead you if it's a service that's not needed. They can't be like, this is needed to fix your car.
If you do 84 months...
Head to the dealership.
84 months, 7 year.
And you're likely to hear this pitch.
127 bi-weekly at 84 months.
Most of the 10 we visited only mentioned 7-year loans. Only rarely did we hear about what used to be the norm, 4 or 5 years.
That to me is short-sighted, just a recipe for problems.
Ontario's auto regulator doesn't much like that, thinking more options should be presented up front. But this auto expert cautions against using a long-term loan at all.
Long-term loans with the low monthly payments often encourage consumers to buy a more expensive car.
Just watch. A $20,000 car on a 5-year loan costs $154 bi-weekly. But a $30,000 car, it's just $11 more, as long as you pay for 2 more years. But beyond spending more, there are big risks with long loans.
The last thing you want to do is be in a situation where you're making payments on your vehicle at the 6th year or 7th year.
On The National tonight, we're tracking a volcano erupting on the Indonesian tourist island of Bali. Mount Agung started erupting yesterday, sending ash 4,000 meters into the atmosphere. At least 24,000 people have been evacuated. And at Indonesia's main airport, flights to and from the island have been canceled. About 7,000 people are stranded. Officials say there is a potential for a larger eruption. An early morning explosion at a Chinese factory has killed at least 2 people and injured dozens more. The blast so powerful, it tore through nearby buildings. So far this year, industrial accidents in China have killed at least 29,000 people. That is an improvement over last year.
Ci ha dato grande dolore
Pope Francis offering prayers today for the victims of the worst bloodshed in Egypt's modern history. On Friday, masked gunmen bearing the ISIS flag opened fire on a mosque in the North Sinai. The death toll now at 305, and that includes 24 children.
37 years of iron-fisted rule riddled with corruption and economic chaos, all culminating in Robert Mugabe's arrest and resignation, only to be handed a golden parachute. Mugabe himself has not been seen for days, but we're learning more about the resignation deal he negotiated for himself last week. It includes a multi-million-dollar payoff supplemented by his annual salary of more than $150,000, which he gets to keep until he dies, along with the legal immunity for himself and his family. And so ends the Mugabe era, but it didn't look like it was going to work out quite so well for him at first. Margaret Evans takes a closer look now at the uncertain last days of a dictator's rule. And just a note, there is some strong language in this story.
We've already passed about 10 tanks, and it seems like more and more are heading towards Harare.
The start of the quiet coup.
Military police and a tank. This is happening in Harare. The date is the 14th of November. Wow, it's real, guys. It is real.
To members of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, all leave is cancelled, and you are all to return to your barracks with immediate effect.
By the time we arrive, the police are nowhere to be seen. The streets eerie.
People still nervous.
People are afraid of guns. They've never seen guns.
November 17th, a Friday. The old man is allowed out from house arrest to hand out diplomas to new graduates. People are unsure who's in charge.
We are giving a warning, a very stark warning to Mugabe, to his wife, and to anybody who still wants to be associated with him, that the game is up, finished, done.
Saturday, November 18th. Something is unleashed in the country. It feels like freedom. Mugabe must go.
They're splashing money all over, wearing 60,000 gold watches, drinking 5,000 champagne while we're suffering on the street. We don't fucking want him anymore. We don't want Mugabe, must fucking go. Happy independence! Happy independence! Happy independence! History in the making.
The people on these streets say there's a new hero in town, and they're sitting in the tank behind me. They believe that the army intervened here for them.
Well done. We salute you all.
But
today is a new day.
Sunday, November 19th. All of Zimbabwe awaits a resignation. They pray for it. The jailed and his jailers appear on television, side by side, but there is no resignation.
I thank you, and good night.
Tuesday, November 20th, another push, this time led by his own party, turning on the hand that has kept them bloated. The move is to impeach. Outside the parliament, people hunker down to wait.
do you think what comes after him will be any better?
We hope so. We hope so, because actually everyone is looking forward for him to go.
When word does come, it is unexpected, in a letter to Parliament, like a lightning bolt from above.
With immediate effect.
The dictator is standing down. And in his place, by the end of the week, Mugabe's one-time acolyte, Emmerson Mnangagwa, the army's man and victor in a power struggle more about the rulers of Zimbabwe than the ruled.
So what do the ruled expect from their new leader, a man known as the Crocodile? Many older Zimbabweans are understandably measured in their expectations, but among the country's youth, there is a thirst for change.
I want him to be better, more better, 100% better than Robert Mugabe. I don't want him being corrupt. I don't want him to have police just beating people for no reason and they did nothing. No tear gas in the city, just peace.
And while he's not alone, millions of Zimbabweans are willing to take a chance on Emmerson Mnangagwa. People in one region of the country remain deeply suspicious of him over the blood they say he spilt there. That's another part of this evolving story that Margaret Evans has for us tonight.
Matabeleland, about 400 kilometers south of Harare. It's in this part of Zimbabwe that you'll find the strongest opposition to Robert Mugabe and to the men who've just ousted him from power. The land out here is still soaked with old sorrows. Bulawayo is the capital, once the industrial heartland of Zimbabwe, now a testament to its decay. Crumbling factories that used to provide jobs and turn out textiles now cater to souls in search of redemption. But there are deeper injuries. When Mbuso Fuzweyo was a child in the 1980s, his grandfather was taken from home by the police. They didn't see him again until a month later.
They brought him home. He was alive, and they shot him.
At home?
Yes.
Up to 20,000 people were killed in what's known here as the Kakora Hoondi, massacres targeting Robert Mugabe's political opponents and never acknowledged by the perpetrators. Fuzweyo now campaigns for that acknowledgement.
The victim and the perpetrator must find the time to sit side by side and talk about it and say, it happened.
Zimbabwe's newly minted president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, was Mugabe's Minister of State Security at the time. In his inauguration address, Mnangagwa urged the country to let bygones be bygones.
That wasn't just about the events of the last 2 weeks. It obviously was about the events of the last 3 decades. He is desperate for that era to be forgotten about.
David Coulthard is a human rights lawyer and former MP and senator for Bulawayo. He authored one of the first detailed reports on the atrocities.
He was one of the principal lieutenants in the execution of what happened here. So he needs to apologize for what has happened, and he needs to promise the nation that we will never have that again. And I think that if he did that, he'd be surprised by the amount of goodwill in this nation.
Many in Matabeleland believe the economic stagnation they endure is deliberate on the part of the country's ZANU-PF rulers. It feeds a growing desire for separation in some. And people also worry that Mnangagwa's pledge to focus on the economy means he will ignore human rights.
He's been Robert Mugabe's principal lieutenant for 30 years, and unless he's a Gorbachev, he's not going to dramatically change respect for human rights.
But it doesn't stop people here from craving a way of confronting the past, one that would help heal.
We might forgive, but I don't think we'll forget. It's something, it's a pain that is still there in people's souls.
Margaret Evans, CBC News, Bulawayo.
Still ahead tonight, most fentanyl overdoses don't actually happen on the street, they happen at home. So why aren't test strips that help detect the drug readily available?
But first, we'll have my conversation with the Maple Leafs coach Mike Babcock about how the NHL deals with mental health. Game 7 of a playoff the night before, a player comes to you, Coach Babcock, and says, I'm sorry, physically I'm fine, mentally I can't do this. Are you ready to deal with that?
No.
In 2017, Canada aimed to accept 300,000 new permanent residents to the country. But who are these new permanent residents and how do they come in? So here's how immigrants and refugees are admitted into Canada. First, it's important to note that immigrants and refugees are not the same. An immigrant is someone who chooses to settle permanently in another country. For Canada, it's mostly economic immigrants, like skilled foreign workers. Then it's family class applicants who are sponsored by spouses or relatives who are already here. Now, a refugee, on the other hand, is someone seeking protection outside their home country. Some may be escaping war zones. Others might be in danger because of their religious or political beliefs or because of their sexual orientation. So, How does Canada screen all these new permanent residents? Well, Canada's Immigration and Refugee Protection Act says all foreign nationals must be screened to protect the health, safety, and security of Canadian society. For immigrants, that starts with a visa application to Canadian consular officials abroad. Officers will scrutinize their documents, histories, and personal relationships, and police checks make sure that the applicants haven't committed any serious crimes or violated international laws. And if at any point someone seems like they might pose a security threat, they have to go through interviews with either CSIS or the CBSA. And they even undergo health screening to make sure they won't pose a burden on the healthcare system. By the time it all checks out, it could be years before they're offered a permanent resident visa. For refugees, the process is similar, but more complicated. Canada's refugee screening process is divided into two categories: resettled refugees and asylum seekers. Resettled refugees start their applications abroad. Asylum seekers, like people who walk across the border from the United States into Canada, usually start their process here, either at a CBSA office or at a screening station. All resettled refugees must be referred to Canada by a designated organization, like the UN's Refugee Agency. Before that can happen, applicants are scrutinized during in-depth face-to-face interviews. All refugees to Canada go through at least 2 of these interviews. Identities are confirmed using biometrics like fingerprinting and facial recognition. Travel histories are cross-checked with international partners, and the names are run against databases of known or suspected terrorists, spies, and war criminals. Then CSIS, the CBSA, and the RCMP can screen even further. Only after all of that can a person be granted refugee status to come to Canada. And remember, many applicants won't find a permanent home in Canada even if they are granted temporary asylum. Of the 15,000 in-country refugee applications processed in 2016, about a third were rejected. And that's not counting the hundreds of applications that were already terminated because the applicants either had criminal records or they abandoned their claims. Whether someone comes here as an immigrant or a refugee, the process is thorough. One security source tells us if there are any remaining concerns about an applicant, they'd sooner reject them or turn them aside than take a risk.
And the great thing about talking about it's not a sign of weakness. And as soon as you reach out to someone and show some compassion, it's amazing what they're willing to share.
We know athletes are tough, thriving in a culture where excuses are not tolerated. It's hard enough to admit to a physical weakness, but what if a player is struggling with their mental health? Well, one of Canada's most successful hockey coaches says it's time athletes and managers started talking about this. My conversation with Mike Babcock in a moment, but first a look at how what has long been a taboo topic in sports is getting some attention.
Here's a 3-2 with 2 outs. Got him!
This past June, Toronto Blue Jays relief pitcher Roberto Osuna disclosed he was struggling with anxiety. It became headline news.
How have you been feeling over the last 24 hours away from the field?
Last winter, former NHL goalie Corey Hirsch wrote an article detailing the darkness that made him think about driving off a cliff. Both received the help they needed, but their stories highlighted the mostly unspoken topic of mental health in sports. Mike Babcock is trying to bring that conversation out of the shadows. The coach who guided Canada to 2 Olympic gold medals and is behind the bench for the Toronto Maple Leafs is now an advocate.
You know how seriously I take coaching, but you may not know I'm just as serious about supporting mental health.
He's part of an initiative called Ahead of the Game. He's partnered with the Movember Foundation and a startup called Babsocks. I met up with Mike Babcock at the Maple Leafs practice facility. Well, thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, I'm great to be here.
I never thought if I would interview Mike Babcock, we'd be talking about a topic other than hockey. How did this become an issue for you, a cause?
A few years back in my home in Emma Lake in Saskatchewan, we lost 2 friends in one summer. Yeah, an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old kid at the time stepped out of a vehicle going 110 kilometers an hour. Yeah. Another man lost his life. His son stabbed him while he was just on his computer. I didn't even know, to be honest with you, mental health existed. Didn't know much about it. Unfortunately, my family hasn't experienced much of it. But at the time, when I went to Jordan Church's funeral, his dad approached me and said, Mike, you got to help out, you got to get involved. And so that's how it started.
Now that you've become a little bit more aware of it, do you think back at all and think, okay, you know, maybe I would have seen stuff if I had looked for it?
Well, that's why I hadn't seen it, because I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know anything about it. But what we've done since is, I was telling you before we got on the air here, my kids are 24, 22, and 20, at that time quite a bit younger. And the first thing you start thinking about is, what's going on in my own family? Are we being prudent parents? Are we talking enough to our kids about this? Have we educated our kids enough to know that if something's going wrong, we better be sharing it? And what you find out as you educate yourself is 1 in 5 Canadians are affected by it. That means 4 guys on my team are affected by mental health issues. So when you think about that, it's important to have an understanding and be able to communicate and understand what's going on with people, or at least try to reach out. But you're right, if I would have known, I would have seen it earlier for sure.
But let's talk about it in the NHL setting, because I find that fascinating. I mean, you live in a world where people are probably afraid to tell you, say, hey coach, you know, my knee hurts. Like they want to hide that from you, right? They just want to go in there and play. What are the chances in the NHL that a player would tell his coach or even his trainer that, like, I've got some mental issues that I'm wrestling with?
Well, you know, I think you're 100% right. Our game's about suck it up. It's about digging it in. It's about being mentally tough. And saying all that, mental toughness and mental illness have nothing to do with each other. Clara Hughes is probably the best example of that. Mental illness, and suffered from it for a long time. Olympic champion over and over again. Unbelievable mental toughness. But I think what you got to do is you got to be aware of what can affect people.
Has it changed your approach at all in talking to your players?
I've only, in my 15-year NHL career, talked to 3 players individually that have come to me to talk about mental health. Now, I've had a lot of conversations, you could say were mental health conversations, but only 3 guys that I've ever really, and we've had ongoing dialogue. But it's amazing, once we had the dialogue once, how you could just touch base with the guy. Hey, how you doing? And he knew exactly what you were talking about, made it easier. And the great thing about talking about it, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of illness, that's it.
We're old enough though, I'll bet you 20 years ago, a player, it would be seen as like, that guy, he just can't cut it. You know, he is weak. Has it changed?
Well, you still got to be able to do your job. No different than in anything in life, is you got to find a way to bring it every single day and do your job. Now, is there a way to help people? Absolutely. Can dialogue help? Can medication help? Yes. Can support services help? There's so many things going on. And I think just by being involved in this, if one of your players knows, I think they think you might have a better understanding. To me, what you're trying to do is maximize the potential of every player of whatever you do. And so by doing that, they need to have a certain comfort level. And to me, that's ability to talk.
I do have to ask you this. I mean, in the NFL, they're confronting the whole issue of the link between concussions and you know, brain injuries and mental illness. What about in the NHL?
Well, there's no question that there's a lot going on in that area, and the safety and the protocol is way different than it used to be. But I think just in retirement alone, never mind concussions and retiring, at the end of your career, you've been the best of the best. You've been living this life, you've been ultra busy, suddenly your career comes to an end. Maybe you're not a star anymore. Maybe you're not as busy anymore. You're trying to find yourself. A lot of guys just tell me at the end of the career, the emotional ups and downs are night and day different as well. So what part's concussion, what part's the career, and I don't know the answers to all this, but what I do know is if you're aware, and as soon as you reach out to someone and show some compassion, it's amazing what they're willing to share.
Game 7 of a playoff the night before, a player comes to you, Coach Babcock, and says, I'm sorry, you know, physically I'm fine, mentally I can't do this. Are you ready to deal with that?
No, and you know, I don't believe it would ever happen, and because I don't think they'd come to you at that time. In saying all that, their health is the most important thing. And your career lasts 15 years if you're really lucky, 10 years, whatever it may be. Your life lasts a long time. Being looked after and being healthy mentally and feeling good about yourself and being healthy enough to look after your family is what it's all about in the end. And sometimes we have momentary setbacks to get to where we need to go. Now, these are tough questions you're asking me, great questions. I don't know the answer for sure. What I do know is that the people I've been surrounded with my whole life are there to help you. And I think most people are that way.
Well, it's a real pleasure talking to you.
You as well.
Thank you very much. He's an impressive guy. Still ahead tonight, Canadian actors are cashing in on the audiobook boom here in Canada, but recording a book is actually a lot harder than just reading it.
No, you must come see. She buys my pupusas. Your what?
It's like a marathon. It's like halfway through, I think, I'm not going to be able to finish this book. I'm not going to be able to finish this day, this hour.
The National with Knowlton Nash.
Good evening. The government is going to draw a line right through the Northwest Territories. Native groups agree with the decision to split the territories in two. But as Whit Fraser reports, there are still obstacles ahead.
Last March, residents of the Northwest Territories voted in favor of dividing the region. They felt the great differences, including linguistic and cultural differences, between the Inuit in the Eastern Arctic and the Indians and whites in the Western Arctic, made it unworkable as one territory, especially when it covers an area that makes up nearly 40% of all Canada. The government's decision today is conditional upon Northerners being able to resolve the difficult question of where the boundaries will be, and upon Native groups settling their long-standing land claims. But both government and Native groups seem to agree there's now a greater incentive to resolve their differences.
The fact that we've recognized the principal division, the fact that they want division, will probably make them more zealous and determined to get a settlement at the bargaining table, force us to work with them at the bargaining table to get a conclusion.
Munro is also giving more power to the governments of the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. He says the federal government will no longer control their purse strings.
They'll know what they're getting, they can set their own priorities and accept their own political accountability for what they do with that money.
There's optimism today's announcement will end bitter political and constitutional fights among Northern people.
I think this will remove a lot of roadblocks, and I think life in the North will become much more normal from now on.
Northerners will be involved all the way, and that it's not a set of decisions imposed from above by a federal government, which they could have done because a lot of these things are really in the federal jurisdiction.
And the Member of Parliament for the Eastern Arctic riding of Nunatsiaq, Peter Atinuar, has left the New Democratic Party to join the Liberals. Today in the North, he told his constituents it'll be easier to work for constitutional development from within the Liberal Party.
While both the Prime Minister and John Munro welcomed Atinuar, they said there were no prior deals and he certainly hasn't been guaranteed a job in the cabinet. And Atinuar's move is not likely to cause him any difficulty in his constituency. Traditionally, party labels don't apply in the Northwest Territories. Lately, there's been a general move by Native people to work within the Liberal Party. Whit Fraser, CBC News, Ottawa.
The move toward more responsibility for both the Northwest and the Yukon territories brings them closer to provincial status. But the government says that is still a long way off.
There really has to be a vision that says, here's how the territories is going to develop. It's not going to be based on dividing up the money by population. It's not going to be based on a vision. And we have never been able to achieve that. It's going to be a tough job to ever come up with one that's going to make everybody happy. And I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime.
And I've seen it at Detonation.
We want people to use them. We want people to not die, plain and simple.
That is a drug worker in New York talking about fentanyl testing strips. In the U.S., they're being handed out in hopes that addicts use them and then have a fighting chance of avoiding a surprise dose of fentanyl in their drugs. A Canadian company makes the strips, but unlike south of the border, Canada is being cautious. Briar Stewart has more on why.
Along the back alleys of Vancouver's downtown east side, the scenes of addiction are brutally real. People shoot up just meters from a supervised injection site where, if they wanted to, they could find out if those drugs they're taking contain fentanyl.
So people would be putting their drugs in that cup?
Yeah, that'd be so a few grains of drugs there.
Dr. Mark Lasician demonstrates just how a test strip can detect the deadly drug.
So this test is negative. There's 2 stripes.
The strips are only available at supervised injection sites and overdose prevention centers, but few people there are asking for them.
So you can be rescued from an overdose, and so the motivation to check there is maybe less than it might be in other environments, but we're testing in those environments because it's legal to do so.
Statistics show that most of BC's drug deaths are happening in private residences, but staff can't let people take the strips off-site because that would require separate permission from Health Canada. They were originally designed to test for drugs in a lab setting, but are now being used off-label. That's why when this pharmacy in Winnipeg started to sell them last year, health officials stepped in.
We had them for sale for, I think it was a day or 2 before Health Canada shut us down. We still receive phone calls from various agencies, parents, drug users. There's a lot of interest.
And they just mix it.
Iqbal Sudarani gets those calls too. He's the CEO of the Canadian company that makes the strips. They're normally marketed to labs and police agencies, but so far this year, more than 200,000 have been sold to harm reduction workers in North America. And he's heard plenty of pleas from others who are desperate to buy the strips, but can't.
It's quite heartbreaking to hear the stories. But, you know, we have to be cautious, like I said, in distributing this test. The last thing you want to do is somebody has overdosed and there's a test on the floor which is showing negative.
There's a concern that the tests could give someone a false sense of security, which is why the company is working with officials in Vancouver to develop a protocol on how they should be used. But in the U.S., where there are no supervised injection sites, workers are choosing to pass out the strips like they do clean needles.
Dip it into the cooker and keep it there for about 15 seconds.
They train people on how to use them on their own.
People keep asking for them. You know, where I just ordered another 2,000. We want people to use them. We want people to not die.
Combination of things.
And that's also why Dr. Lesician would like the strips to be more accessible in BC.
We recognize that it's not available enough. You know, we're basically using the places where we have an opportunity to offer it because it's legal.
While many users might not choose to test their drugs, some will. And for them, the strips could mean the difference between life and death. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
Health Canada is looking to allow the test strips at 3 other supervised injection sites, and it says more study is needed to determine exactly how effective the strips really are. There are no plans yet to make them more widely available. All right, lots more still ahead tonight. But first, we want to give you a preview of a story you'll see here tomorrow. Joanna Leotis takes us inside Canada's largest human trafficking investigation unit. She spent a lot of time with them. Here's a preview.
Toronto Police's human trafficking unit is the largest in the country. Its mandate, to find young, often underage girls forced to work in the sex trade.
There's a good chance that they could be underage.
This is the start of a sting. Officers comb online sex ads, looking for clues of exploitation.
When the ad says that they're new to town, what does that suggest?
It suggests they're being moved from city to city, right? So they don't stay in one location for a long period of time.
Is that to keep them isolated?
Yes, absolutely.
Most of the officers work undercover. It's why we can't identify them.
One of those criteria of obvious exploitation is branding. Branding?
What does that mean?
Branding is where a pimp or someone who's controlling the young lady, they have a tattoo applied to their chest or somewhere on their body that's fairly visible to the public. And it shows as if they're the property of the pimp.
A mango is a mango is a mango, right? Well, not quite. These mangoes have been zapped. They've been irradiated with a dose roughly equivalent to 10,000 chest x-rays.
Good. Approved by the FDA, the USDA, nice. The EPA.
Delicious.
This peculiar taste test took place in Miami Beach 2 months ago. Lorenzo's became the first place in North America ever to sell irradiated fruit. And there's a chance irradiation may come to Canada. Instead of mangoes, we may end up eating zapped chicken. The irradiation of food may become one of the hottest health issues of the 1980s.
Here is the first really new method of food preservation.
You want to get nuked? Sure, go for it, and let's build a silo in my backyard.
Oh, I have eaten irradiated food, and I certainly would actively look for it if it was in the supermarket.
This is cobalt-60, a byproduct of Canada's nuclear reactors, and the most common power source of food irradiation. This is how it works. Chicken, for example, goes into the irradiator on large pallets. Inside, the cobalt-60 rods are raised from a pool of water. The chicken revolves around the radioactive source. The rods are returned to the water, and the irradiated chicken moves outside. The government is now considering allowing the irradiation of poultry for two reasons. Firstly, to cut down salmonella poisoning. Most cases of salmonella poisoning in Canada involve poultry. Secondly, to extend shelf life. For 40 years, scientists have studied food irradiation, and most have declared it safe. They point to the astronauts who munch their way to the moon on zapped steak. They say it's safer, cheaper, and more effective than chemical sprays and fumigants. Sprays and fumigants that in some cases have been outlawed.
We're looking in agriculture for non-chemical means of protecting the crops or the animals.
Dr. Norm Tape of Agriculture Canada has just been made chairman of a UN group of all 26 nations that currently irradiate food.
Irradiation isn't going to be a panacea. It's not going to be our milk supply or breads and our meats and our fish and all that. I think there are going to be selected applications where there are health benefits and it's economically feasible.
The people that work here at Atomic Energy of Canada Limited have asked the government for approval to irradiate poultry. They're waiting for the government's decision with great interest. Most of the 140 irradiators now in use around the world have been produced right here. In the majority of cases, they're used to sterilize medical and hospital disposable goods like surgeon's gloves or cotton swabs. It's a multi-million-dollar business, a growth sector in a nuclear industry that has been slumping badly. If the government gives the green light for food irradiation, AECL could be the big winner.
Well, we're talking many millions of dollars of business a year, well downstream.
Bruce Wilson is AECL's director of marketing. He's sold irradiators around the world from China to South Africa, $15 million worth over the last year alone.
Given that you have a regulation in place, you have the world's biggest and best supplier of this technology in your own backyard.
This February, the Olympic Winter Games are coming to CBC, Canada's Olympic Network.
Next. No. What's this video game called?
Dating.
You better not get the high score.
Now, some of the stories we'll be following this week here on The National.
We are committed to apologizing in an inclusive and meaningful manner.
On Tuesday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will offer a historic apology to members of the military, RCMP, and civil service who were fired between the 1950s to 90s simply because they were gay. Ottawa is also expected to reach a settlement in a class action lawsuit brought by some of those LGBT public servants. Trudeau will also offer pardons and to expunge the criminal records of those who were convicted of consensual same-sex activity.
The RCMP is going to be held accountable. And I'm happy that, I guess, my husband didn't die in vain.
A sentencing hearing will start on Thursday in the RCMP Labour Code trial into the shooting deaths of 3 Mounties in Moncton, New Brunswick. In September, a judge ruled that the Mounties were guilty of not providing adequate use of force equipment and training. The officers were caught outgunned and ill-prepared to confront gunman Justin Bourque in 2014. The RCMP faces a maximum fine of $1 million. Pope Francis will make his first ever visit to Myanmar this week as the country deals with a rapidly escalating humanitarian crisis. Since August, more than 600,000 Rohingya Muslims have fled across the border into Bangladesh, seeking safety from what the United Nations has called a case of textbook ethnic cleansing. The Pope will visit both Myanmar and Bangladesh during his upcoming trip.
And the Grammy goes to...
And the nominations for the 60th Grammy Awards will be released on Tuesday. The Late Late Show host, James Corden, will host music's biggest night at Madison Square Garden in New York City on January 28th.
Canada is in the middle of an audiobook boom, both when it comes to sales and production. A lot of Canadian actors are lending their voices to bring books to life, and even the Prime Minister.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, and this is Common Ground. This is my life story, or at least the first 42 years of it. I wanted to give readers a glimpse into my life by reflecting on the experiences that have shaped me and the values that guide me.
That's right, Justin Trudeau has recorded the introduction to his own memoir for the upcoming audiobook. Colin Fiore ends up reading the rest. In fact, Canadian actors are now go-to talent for the burgeoning audiobook industry, but literature for listeners isn't automatic for actors. As Salima Shivji explains, the audiobook is an art all of its own.
This isn't familiar territory for Tom McCamus. He's used to being on camera, not behind the mic.
He sees his father through the bare trees as he rides down the slope towards the swimming hole.
The character actor is here to lend his voice to a Canadian classic he loves dearly. It's McCamus's first audiobook, so he made sure to do his homework.
Actually, I called some friends who do it a lot and asked them, and got some advice on what to do.
He's trying to keep in mind a tip that's the opposite of what he's used to on stage.
Okay. The listener hears the words and his or her imagination tells the story. If I tell too much of the story through my own interpretation, then I get in their way. He can see 2 or 3 lanterns between the soft maple and the walnut tree.
Sarah Mennel is not as well known, but she has some audiobook experience. For this one, she didn't have much time to prepare. In the rush to get a novel on the Giller shortlist, recorded, edited, and ready for purchase.
Mr. Ronan.
Still, despite the tight timeline, she has a bank of voices she can draw on.
No, you must come see. She buys my pupusas. Your what?
Part of the beauty, she says, of starring in audiobooks.
I get to play all these different characters that I would not be able to play on film and TV because I don't look like that, or I'm not the right age, or I'm not the right sex. And the old woman tells she... Just the whole sentence, please.
Making it worth the 30 hours it took to get this recording done.
It's like a marathon. It's like halfway through, I think, I'm not going to be able to finish this book. I'm not going to be able to finish this day, this hour.
Finish she did, to kudos from the author.
She's really imbued the book with its tone, the tone that I wrote. And so I've listened to her read the book. I feel like I'm entering it from a different direction. It's a lot of fun for me.
Fun for the actors also, as they take advantage of the surge in work. Audiobook sales are up nearly 20% year after year, and the potential for more growth is not lost on companies like Audible and Penguin Random House. They've now started producing audiobooks here. As one of our most celebrated authors put it when Audible launched its Canadian wing,
Audible is going to be employing so many actors that you're going to have trouble finding somebody to serve your cappuccino.
It's no laughing matter, but rather big business. And Hollywood stars are clamoring to get into the audiobooks game. Claire Danes.
Waste not, want not. I am not being wasted.
A story has no beginning or end.
And Colin Firth among them. But the audiobooks world already has its own star system. Remember that guy from the 90s hit TV show Wings? Turns out Steven Weber is pretty famous these days.
8 months before the real horrors began.
For reading Stephen King's It out loud. And cancer-stricken Miss Rosa from Orange is the New Black. Barbara Rosenblatt is better known as the Meryl Streep of audiobooks. She's done more than 500. She literally wrote the book on it.
I have a running joke.
A guide that many are following as listeners absorb more Canadian classics made right here at home. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Toronto.
And Rosemary, I know you love reading books. What about listening to them?
Well, I'm going to say what all Canadians are thinking right now, Ian, and that's that you would be very good at that.
I think for each of us, that would be a good thing to keep in mind as we decide at some point far in the future to change careers.
A plan B. Very good.
All
Thanks. Right. That's the National for November 26th. Good night, everybody.
Good night.